Du coup, hello YouTube, j'espère que vous allez bien. On se retrouve tout de suite. On enchaîne direct. C'est la suite du jeu. On va pas tarder à voir ce que ça donne. Je ne sais pas si c'est inclus avec le Ultra Deluxe ou pas. Mais on va voir tout de suite. On va commencer le jeu ensemble.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Ouais, assez de jeux qui étaient gratuits sur le PS Plus. Et malheureusement, je l'avais déjà acheté avant. Genre à 2-3 mois et je le fais que maintenant. Et du coup, ça a l'air d'être le même jeu. Non? Pour moi,
All
c'est
of
le
his
même.
co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Ouais, c'est ça, dur. Oui, voilà, c'est une feinte. En plus, j'ai envie de crever les ballons, j'arrive pas. Je suis en train d'appuyer. Ah oui, effectivement, je suis bien sur PlayStation 5. Là. Bon.
Stanley felt the bucket calling to him, begging
Ah.
him to pick it up. Why was he not doing it?
Le seau. Où est le seau? Ah, il est là, mon seau. Mais c'est ça, je
Stanley
te jure.
picked up the bucket.
Ouais, c'est exactement le
Stanley
même.
clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Sauf qu'il y a un seau en plus.
Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth
Ouais,
and comfort
le
now
jeu
more
troll.
than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers. Oh, Stanley, can you feel it? The broom closet. It wants the bucket. You can feel that, can't you? The aura of jealousy? It's as clear as day. This broom closet believes it deserves the bucket. I can really feel it now. It's a bucket. It belongs in a broom closet. That's what the broom
Non.
closet is trying to say here. It's supposed to go with the other cleaning
Bah tiens.
supplies.
Et
Don't
je le
stop,
mets où?
Stanley. Don't give in. Don't hand over the bucket. I
Ouais, je
know
le
how
garde.
hard
Allez.
it must be, given the pressure that the broom closet is putting on your shoulders right now, but you have to be strong. This is your bucket. This is your companion and lifelong
C'est mon
friend.
ami.
To a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any
Je me
human
souviens
life.
plus du code.
Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos.
28-45.
It would be with him always. The bucket would, and he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845.
Ouais, ça change pas. Ok. 28-45.
But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Désolé. Oh, bonjour.
You found one of them. One of the miniature Stanley figurines. Remember, no reward for
En fait,
collecting
faut
all of
refaire
these,
tout le jeu.
only the intrinsic pleasure
Retrouver les
of
petites
a
figurines.
job well done. You can't buy
Non.
that sort of happiness, Stanley. God knows I've tried. So, I implore you to savor each and every moment you come
Non.
across one of these beautiful figurines.
C'est ça le Stanley 2? Ouais, du coup, je l'ai fait. Et j'ai apprécié, j'ai apprécié ma fin. Franchement, j'ai apprécié ma fin.
It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
Désolé, je parlais dans le vent depuis tout à l'heure. Et toi, tu l'as fait du coup ou pas?
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves. The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket
Ouais, franchement, les deux, j'ai super bien apprécié. Je trouve que l'ambiance, elle est restée. Et franchement, j'ai apprécié. J'ai pas été déçu. C'est pas comme le Resident Evil 3 où j'étais déçu.
He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control, never! He squeezed the bucket tighter, his one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket.
J'aime bien quand le narrateur dit j'ai confiance qu'au
The heart of the operation, controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a really cool way, and the bucket made a sassy comment about taking down.
Je sais pas si tu l'as déjà fait ou pas, mais pourtant je crois que j'avais mis en mode facile en plus.
When at last they came to the source of the room's power, Stanley and the bucket knew it was their obligation to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
Pardon.
Stanley and the bucket waited in blackness. Was it over?
Franchement, pour ma part, c'est pas mon préféré. Le R6 n'est pas mon préféré.
Yes, they had done it. Stanley
Dans
and
le
the bucket
sens
had
où,
defeated their
en
greatest
fait,
and
je pense
darkest
qu'il faut
enemy,
mieux le jouer à
freed
deux,
themselves from the
que tu peux le jouer à
tyrannical
deux, et
grip
moi,
of the evil mind control
je l'ai fait
machine.
seul.
Freedom was now mere
C'est ça
moments
qui m'a
away.
refroidi ou pas.
Excitedly, the two of them began to discuss the kind of life they wanted to live once they stepped through this massive door. The bucket
Ouais,
wanted to learn to
Véronica,
roller
je l'aime
skate.
bien.
Stanley wanted to sneeze in every country on earth. Both of
Le,
them wanted to begin
le
watching a
5
movie,
en fait,
any movie, but
c'est
then
bizarre. En
stop it
fait, c'est le
halfway
premier, c'est vrai que c'est le
through
premier que je
and begin
préfère.
watching it in reverse from the end.
Le 4,
True, it was a simple
il est
life they
magnifique.
envisioned, but it was one they'd lived together, with one another to lean on, to trust, to support. What? Wait. What was happening? Why had the door stopped? Was Stanley and the bucket not about to be freed? An unbearable silence filled the room, lingering in uncertainty, until finally the truth hit Stanley square in the face. This building did not want the bucket to leave. Even the facility itself recognized the incredible calming presence of the bucket, needed the soothing warmth of the bucket, would go to any lengths not to part with the bucket. No, no, no.
Ouais.
Stanley can't
Le
leave
0, je le
this
trouve,
place. Not while he has such a
je le trouve top.
precious bucket in his arms. Not while this building has anything to say about it.
En fait, c'est les premiers. Peut-être parce que j'ai grandi avec sur la Play 1.
But at least he has the bucket. To be trapped eternally in darkness isn't really so bad, Stanley thought to himself. As long as I have my bucket with me, right? I'll be okay, won't I? Stanley gulped. Very soon now, he was
Mais
about
c'est
to
vrai que
find
mon
out.
regret, c'est de ne pas avoir Resident Evil Veronica en physique. Et il m'énervait quand j'ai joué parce que je crois les touches sont inversées.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had... Stanley lifted the bucket into his arms, and a wave of comfort rushed over him. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge
Ah ouais?
was simply the
Ah,
place
ce
to
sera
be.
top! Je pense que j'aimerais bien le refaire.
And here it was.
J'avais mis longtemps, je me rappelle, à l'époque de la Play 1.
Yes, no.
J'avais eu du mal, hein.
The bucket was
Juste à
wrong.
cause des
Stanley
touches.
took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo lift. Good,
Said the bucket.
now ride the lift all the way to the top.
Non!
There's something up there I need you to do.
Je suis
Stanley
parti.
did not question why or
Comment
how
on fait
this
pour aller
bucket was
là-bas?
speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this
Oh,
obvious
punaise.
fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket
j'aurais pu
had
tomber.
spoken to him, and he
Oh,
unthinkingly did
punaise.
whatever the bucket
Vite
asked.
de crotte. Bon, prochain try.
In here.
Said the bucket.
Go into this dark room over here.
Stanley
Quelle
once
pièce
again
sombre.
obeyed blindly.
Ouais, celle-ci. Hop. Hello?
Now pick up the phone.
Said the bucket.
Pick up the phone and it will take us back home.
Allô? Allô?
This is the sad story of a man named Stanley and his bucket. Once upon a time, I gave Stanley a bucket because I thought he was lonely and could use a friend. And then, very distressingly, he began to believe the bucket could speak to him.
Aidez-moi. Ah, salut. Allez, on y va.
The Stanley Parable Reassurance Bucket was merely meant to provide the comforting glow of companionship. It doesn't literally talk and give you orders. Whatever Stanley is hearing the bucket say to him is just in his head.
Non. Bon, d'accord, on y va.
Lately, I've been concerned about him. Wouldn't you be concerned as well? To see him delusional like this, obsessing over an inanimate metal object? I want to say something to him, but I don't know how I can convince him. I don't know if he'll listen to me. Well, I'll try anyway. Stanley, can you hear me? Listen to me. It's just a bucket. It can't think, it can't talk. All it will ever truly do for you is effectively transfer a liquid from one location to a different location. That's it. It doesn't do anything else.
Moi, je serais tenté sur du super punk. Après, ça dépend de ton numéro du jour.
You see, he's not listening. He's still taking orders from the bucket. You know, once upon a time it was me he took orders from, me he trusted and listened to. Now all he cares about is his awful bucket, this stupid hunk of metal.
Bon, c'est vrai que je l'ai pas fini en entier, mais...
It's sad. I suppose he
on
doesn't
est
need me
désolé. Ça
anymore.
doit pas être très
From
agréable.
now on, he's just going to cling to this bucket, this cold, empty bucket, this sort of shiny bucket. Well, I'll give it this. The bucket does have a nice shine to it. Yes, I suppose on closer inspection that it doesn't quite look like your average hardware store bucket. It's just a little more, what am I trying to say?
Et l'autre, tu l'as déjà fait, du coup? L'autre jeu?
Like it would be better at moving an amount of water from one room to another. Oh my God, what am I saying? Better at carrying water from room to room. It's a bucket. It's literally just a bucket. Why do I feel some need to point out the ways in which it's so much more than just a regular bucket? Oh no, I'm having feelings for the bucket. No, what's going on? Why do I want to be with the bucket? Hear what the bucket has to say, do anything it asks. What's wrong with me? I don't understand. Perhaps if I had the bucket, this would be less confusing. Yes, the bucket could tell me what to do in this troublesome situation.
Bah, Kingdom, je l'ai jamais fait.
Give me the bucket. Give it to me. Give me the bucket, Stanley. I need it. Give it to me now. Give it or I'll...
Donc du coup, je sais pas. C'est quoi l'histoire?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Oh, déjà la salle a changé.
The
On
confusion
reprend
and the chaos all seemed to melt away as Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Well, no, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
C'est vrai que j'aime énormément quand il y a des scénarios.
Don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo lift.
Est-ce que je vais réussir à passer?
another miniature Stanley figurine.
Open world.
This,
Ça, c'est un piège,
you
ça.
know, there really must be a
C'est
snappier
un
name for
piège.
these things. What about mini stands? Stanley figs? What about
Ah, j'ai tout faire.
Stanleries? Yes,
Je pense
I
qu'il y
think
a
I
des
like
quêtes
that.
secondaires, du coup,
Another
en open world.
Stanlerine under your belt.
Je vois plus rien. Où suis-je? D'accord.
Okay, this is day number 295, tape number... I don't even know. I've lost track. Nothing feels real anymore. The longer I study this bucket, the less sense anything makes. The sheer euphoria I feel every time I pick it up. No matter how many times I've done it, it's always the same feeling. And the emptiness in my chest when I set it down. It doesn't make sense. There's no explanation for it. I still haven't figured out why I see the world so differently when this bucket is in my arms. Why everything
Ça me rappelle un mélange de Plague Tale. Genre l'histoire à
What
l'ancienne.
do I do with this treasure? I can monetize it. Yes. It's unthinkable the amounts of money people will pay for even just an hour with the bucket. This is my golden ticket. But I have to be careful, because as soon as this gets out, there's going to be a target on my back.
Et la durée du jeu, elle est... ça veut dire elle doit être longue, non? Ça veut dire que t'as le temps pour faire... Avant que ça arrive au 2, avant que la sortie du 2 sorte.
A soft wind blew outside and perhaps rain started, and if it did, it stopped shortly after. Stanley hoped that he would one day see weather. Warmth spread through Stanley's arms. With the bucket in his arms again, he was home. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this better than the meeting room? Yes, Stanley thought to himself. No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Good,
Said the bucket.
now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because but Stanley feared that any path he walked might lead to the separation of himself and the bucket, his dearest friend. So he threw himself to his death, that they might die in one another's arms. How deeply it
C'était
touched him.
vraiment pas volontaire de sauter. Et ouais, je sais pas si... Je crois que je parlais dans le vent, mais 7 heures de
How
jeu,
long was
de
I sitting
vidéo,
there? Stanley wondered to himself. Minutes?
c'est incroyable.
Days? Centuries? Did something... Stanley picked up the bucket and smiled. He'd never be alone again, not truly alone, not with the bucket around. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this... No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his
Je te
left.
jure que c'était
Go
vraiment
back to
pas
the meeting
volontaire
room.
le... Je voulais sauter, mais pas là tout de suite. Je regardais ce qu'il y
Said
avait en
the
bas,
bucket.
Don't go
s'il y
to
avait
the
quelque chose
meeting room.
d'intéressant ou
Go
pas.
somewhere else.
Mais
The
apparemment, c'est la
cargo
mort
lift,
qui m'a...
yes. Good.
Said the
C'est en fait,
bucket.
c'est
Now
le
ride
camion
the
qui m'a
lift all
trigué
the way
en
to
bas.
the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed
Le
him, of
camion
course,
avec les
because
feux allumés
buckets
qui
can't
m'intrigue.
talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket
Là, je vais
had
sauter.
spoken to
Enfin,
him, and
j'espère que je
he
vais réussir.
unthinkingly
Hop,
did whatever the
hop,
bucket
c'est bon.
asked. No, stop.
Non, non,
Look
non,
there on the wall,
non.
you see? There's a sign right
Oh,
there. It says, no buckets past this point. Stanley, how could you think
j'ai
it
pas
was
le droit d'y
okay to
aller.
bring the bucket here? Unless, what if the problem is that you actually don't know what is a bucket and what isn't a bucket? I suppose that would explain a lot about your behavior up to this point. Which, if that's true, well, my goodness, I think we have to do something about it. This misunderstanding could have dire consequences on the entire rest of the game if not addressed quickly and properly. So much of the impact of the story is dependent on your understanding of what is and isn't a bucket. Please, step in here for a moment.
Je vais vraiment dans la pénombre là.
Now then, I'm going to run you through some test scenarios and you'll tell me whether or not the thing I'm showing you is a bucket. Simple enough, right? This should tell us everything we'll ever need to know about what is or is not a bucket. Okay, let's begin. Item 1. Is this a bucket?
Bah oui, c'est un seau.
Incorrect.
Ah, c'est
It is a
pas...
hologram of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 2. Is this a bucket?
Bah,
Correct. It is a 3D printed recreation of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 3. Is this a bucket?
franchement, je préfère sur PlayStation. En fait, c'est bizarre parce que
Correct. This is a bucket.
je suis habitué aux consoles en fait. Il me faut la manette. En fait, il me faut la manette. Là, j'ai acheté un PC là, il y a...
Item 4. Is this a bucket?
Est-ce que c'est un seau? Ouais, j'ai acheté un PC il y a...
Correct. This is
Yeah.
a tractor and not a bucket. To be honest, I just sort of put this one in
Comment ça
here
s'appelle?
as a gimme,
Il y a
but I
3
was
mois.
starting to get concerned.
Il y a un
that
mois à peu
even
près,
this
et
might be
franchement,
too
j'ai
much for
j'ai
you.
du mal.
Thank you for not making me look like an idiot. Okay, next one. Is this a bucket? Incorrect. This is a bucket.
Comment ça, c'est un seau?
Item 6.
Pas un peu de
Is
la
this a
tête du
bucket?
monde?
Trick question. Both. Gotcha. Item... Wait,
Faites-moi
hold on, I can't
sortir
find the next one. Let
d'ici,
me see, it should be around here somewhere.
s'il vous plaît.
Okay, you and I both know there isn't anything here. And I don't appreciate the implication that nothing is a bucket when we both clearly know that a bucket is something, and therefore nothing could possibly be something. Unless, in your twisted mind, have you somehow convinced yourself that a bucket is nothing? Answer me straight, Stanley. Do you believe that nothing is a bucket? You know what? I'm too confused to even sort it out. I've lost all sense of perspective.
Allez,
What is a
on
bucket?
y va.
What isn't a bucket? Mere moments ago, I could
Bah,
answer these
merci en
questions with
tout
confidence.
cas
And yet now
du
I'm somewhat
passage.
adrift.
Et
Any of us know what a
bah, bonne
bucket
geek.
is?
Merci encore du
Am
passage en
I
tout cas
a
et
bucket?
à la prochaine.
Stanley, I can't keep
Merci
doing
beaucoup en
this.
tout cas du
I'm
passage.
losing myself, and myself was all I ever had to begin with. I'm afraid the bucket is threatening to tear our relationship apart. I can't have that. I'm sorry. But I'm going to erase all buckets from the game entirely. Okay, here we go. What happened? Is everything gone? Why did everything disappear? Wait, was everything a bucket? Every single thing in the game was a bucket. Oh my God, I had no idea. How could... except me. I'm not a bucket after all. And you, Stanley, you're still here. You're not a bucket either. Oh, this is wonderful news. We're not buckets. Yes, I actually feel much more at ease right now. It's delightful to get some clarity on that issue, but it doesn't change the fact that we haven't got a game. So, tell you what, I'll reset everything and we'll put back all of the buckets, okay? And we'll know that it's all a bucket. But if you run into anyone else, maybe don't mention that. Who knows what that information might do to a person? All right, here we go.
Faut pas hésiter à aller suivre notre cher astrologie. Et le 23, il sera sur Hitman. Donc faut pas hésiter à y aller. Le sang!
The good old bucket. Just Stanley and the bucket. Off on another thrilling adventure together. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was it... No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back, and so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door. Oh, good, Stanley. I'm glad you found your way here. I knew you'd find this place eventually. You see, your friends and I are concerned for you, Stanley. We've come together here because we care about you very much. It's this bucket you're carrying around everywhere. The bucket isn't even from the original Stanley Parable. It's just sequel content. We're the ones that matter, Stanley. Classic characters from the first game, like the Adventure Line and the Broom Closet. Because that's what fans want from a sequel. They want more of their favorite jokes, not this bucket that they've never seen before. Yes, I know I'm the one who gave you the bucket, but you're spending too much time with it. Don't you want another story involving the Adventure Line? We could make the Adventure Line go somewhere new. Yes, yes, that's what the fans want. Let's do it. Whee! Look at that wacky line. Who knows where it'll go off to next? Oh, and it played some silly music as well. Now This is what the Stanley Parable is all about. Don't you remember all those great jokes from the original dialogue?
Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers.
Yes, it's as classic now as it was back then. Let's do it for the fans, Stanley. Let's give them more content exactly like this. But if we want to do that, you're going to have to give something up. Don't you get it, Stanley? We need to get rid of the bucket. That's why I'm very proud to introduce a brand new character. This is the Bucket Destroyer. I think it'll make a wonderful new addition to the rich lore of the Stanley Parable. True, it also was not in the original game, but it's such a well-fleshed-out character with so much personality that to me it already feels as though it's been part of the cast all along. Don't you agree? Can you guess what the Bucket Destroyer does? Surely you don't need me to spell it out for you.
Jetez-le-moi!
Go ahead now, Stanley. Say goodbye to the bucket, and then pop it into the machine when you're ready.
Vas-y, tiens! Tiens! Non?
Now listen to me. It's crucial that you give it the bucket. I don't know what the Bucket Destroyer will do if it can't destroy your bucket. Destroying buckets is all it knows. That is its singular personality trait. Sure, I can hear you saying, how does a character with only one personality trait deserve to join the pantheon of beloved Stanley Parable characters? Well, you see, if you were to really explore the Bucket Destroyer, you would see that its desire to crush buckets is so densely loaded with complexity and nuance that it's really like 10 personality traits. What other object in this game can you even say that about? The broom closet? Certainly not. I wonder what sort of Bucket Destroyer merchandise the fans will be clamoring for after this. Okay, the Bucket Destroyer is getting very upset now. You'll have to hurry and feed it. We can't get back to the classic Stanley Parable characters like the Adventure Line or the Bucket Destroyer until you crush that damn bucket. Quickly now, the fans are waiting. Do it, the fans, Stanley. Give the fans what they want. Hurry and...
Ah. Au revoir.
The Bucket Destroyer, my prized creation. You had so much potential. We were going to do such marvelous things with you, tell such spellbinding stories about you. All of it squandered now. Goodbye, new friend. For the moment in time that you were here, you were magnificent.